Paul, welcome to my kitchen. Oh, I've got a present for you. The present I've got for you. Welcome, by the way, Paul.
Thank you.
How are you? How are you?
Thank you.
I didn't even get a chance to say hello to you. I've got your present, and I realised last time you came on, I bought you a bottle of red wine.
That's right.
And then I read your book, and there's a chapter on people buying you presents.
Yeah.
Well, there's not a chapter. There's a little bit on it.
It's a reference.
As a reference, and it's reminds me. It's don't buy me whiskey.
Yeah, it's called Not Everybody Drinks Whiskey.
That's it.
And it's all about one of my clients, really pleased with the work I'd done for Christmas, sent me a big bottle of whiskey. I don't drink whiskey. And it's that whole point about how we sometimes like to treat people, how we want to be treated, which on one level sounds fine.
Yeah.
But so I talk about a friend who then wants to give me some kind of gift, but he rings up the office to find out. And the office tell him he likes pale ales and Belgian beers.
So the point of this is do your research.
Exactly, yeah. And don't make that assumption that because what floats your boat will automatically float everybody else's, because it doesn't always. Lovely intention, lovely heart, big bottle of whiskey, what a fantastic gesture. But there's can be that assumption, because I love something, you'll love it as well.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, so I think I've done you good here. Hold on a second. I'm going to the
Right.
fridge.
Okay.
Get your present.
Wonderful.
So this is your present.
Like,
It's not whiskey.
it's really good whiskey.
Open it, Paul.
Okay.
It's wrapped up there because this is a beer I got you because I read it and I thought, well, okay, I'm not going to get him a wine then. I'm going to get him a beer.
Yeah.
But I can't just get you a bottle of beer because that's not special enough. So this is from Brooklyn Brewery. It's a local ale, it's called, but it's re-fermented in the bottle with champagne yeast. So I thought it'd be a bit different for you. You don't have to like it, but it's a has wonderful yeasty influences of sweet spice, lilies, and dried fruit. So it's a beer, but kind of like sort of champagne-y infused beer.
Awesome.
So I thought, even though I thought I'd take your theory on one beer, which is, you like a beer, and I know you like a beer, but you might like this even better. It's an experience I bought you,
Hey,
Paul.
well, do you know what? On a week tomorrow, my son gets married. Never always likes to open bottles of champagne. I can cope with champagne,
Yeah.
but I'm going to open this on November
Open
the
that.
2nd.
I wonder if it'll be nice though. I wouldn't know whether it'll be nice or not.
But on that occasion, but you have put some thought into it.
Yeah,
haven't
it's a
you?
nice
and I really
it's a nice
appreciate
bottle.
it. And the wine was good as well. I like wine, but I don't really drink whiskey.
Right, okay. We're going to talk about your book in a minute. It's called How to Have a Great Life, 35 Surprisingly Simple Ways to Success, Fulfillment and Happiness. I've endorsed your book, Paul.
You did.
Because I do like you, and I do like the way you write books. It says life-changing advice, which it is. And I was reading it. I keep on reading it, but I was reading it again the other day, just flicking through because I knew you were coming. And there's just so many beautiful gems all the way through it. You can just keep picking it up and looking at it. We'll talk about that in a minute. But first of all, remind us, for anyone who hasn't listened to the first podcast you came on, what you do and how you got to where you got to.
Okay, I suppose the simple answer to what is, and the shortest answer is, so what do I do? So I'm a speaker, is one way of describing it. And that's part of what I do. And I speak around subjects around change, leadership, and built in with that about resilience, well-being and motivation. And I also do a little bit around communication and customer service. So that's one thing I do, is the speaking. Secondly, I'm an author. So obviously this is the second time I've been on your podcast. And you talked about the Sumo book last time.
Yeah, brilliant book.
Shut Up, Move On.
Yeah.
And then this one, How to Have a Great Life. I've actually written 11 books. And then the third thing I do is I'm involved in Sumo for Schools. So set that up probably around about 2008, 2009. Having had an interesting, and we'll just use that word, interesting childhood. And, often I say, if I had to describe my life in one word, the word I wouldn't use would be fairy tale. I'd probably say it's been a bit of a roller coaster. And I think through life, I have messed up, screwed up, had major anxiety issues, self-esteem issues, just tons of a mess, really. And yet, personal development and the support of friends really kind of helped me along the way. But I kind of got to my kind of like 40s, and I thought it's taken me to my 40s to get to understand some of these ideas, some of these life strategies. Wouldn't it be good if kids going to school when they were 6, 7, 8, 9, and in their teenage years got some of those strategies as well? So if I'm honest, I wouldn't say when we set up Sumo for Schools, it was a rip-roaring success immediately. We made some penetration into the education market, had some definite ups and downs. We had some people who got on board who tried to do their best to make it happen and didn't. But I persevered with it. I do a lot in education. Obviously, I've worked with Drew Povey, who was in Harrop Fold. And now I'm collaborating with some other organisations to take Sumo for Schools even further digitally, collaborating with an organisation in America. So that's the other sort of third arm. So speaking, author, and Sumo for Schools.
And that can't be more important, especially at the moment. We've created this environment which is the exam factory at school. All my regular listeners go, oh God, here he goes again. But I just keep on looking at school and thinking, what the hell are we doing to our kids here? We're not setting them up for life. We're just putting them through this stress and strain of...
But we can always compare our league tables to that of China and go,
nonsense.
Oh, look at how we're doing. The fact is...
Or Singapore, that gets quoted at me a lot at the moment.
The bottom line is, in both male and female, there is an increase in young people's suicide. And I'm not for... I don't think it's either or. I think, education and learning, maths and English are great, and science particularly. But we can still have the other stuff as well. It needs to be more holistic. It's not, well, which do we choose? You're going to be the right-wing discipline or the left-wing liberal person. Yeah. It's like, no, blend it together so that we are developing, children for life. And with Sumo for Schools, it's not about how do we help kids with their problems. The starting point is how do you help children to thrive and flourish? Because none of us are magically born with the skills and know how to do that. So that's kind of what I'm on the journey of doing.
Yeah, and I keep saying to my my kids, don't worry, when you leave school, life becomes better. And they're like, what? And I'm like, it's not like this horrific. You go home and study and do. You sit there studying stuff you're not interested in, trying to memorize it for exams, and you got all the stress and strains. Real life is the stress is nice stress often. I mean, obviously people have bad stress, but you can choose the direction you go in. It's
Absolutely.
Nice, So
I found when I started to do my A levels, I started to enjoy life a little bit more because it was a chosen subject. Then I went to university. I was doing something I wanted to do. I mean, my daughter, who's probably not the most academic person on the planet, but she chose criminology and psychology at university, and she enjoyed the subject because she enjoyed it, she worked hard and got a degree.
We seem to be getting more into the idea of looking to people like yourself and therapists, etc., for help with the way we go through life, aren't we? It seems to be more acceptable. Even in the last 10 years, it's really grown, hasn't it, the marketplace for it?
When I wrote Sumo, I wrote Sumo to back end of 2004, and it came out in 2005. And it is interesting that people, engaged with the book. It did well. It sold lots of copies. But we didn't talk about well-being. We didn't talk about resilience. We didn't even have mindfulness, really, in our in our diction, really, at that point. And now, 13 years after the book came out, you talk about mindfulness, resilience, and well-being, and it's like it's on everybody's radar.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? That was one of the questions I was going to ask you, actually. If you've written 11 books, how is the advice moving on from each one?
Actually, my first book I ever wrote was actually on CV writing, believe it or not, how to write a CV that works. And... there'd still be elements of the advice in that book that I wrote probably in about 1994. See your CV as a sales document. So, in fact, it still wouldn't be radically different. There are certain things you might tweak and change, but if you were to read that book, someone was to read that book now, you'd still get some good advice that is applicable even in 2018. I think really how my insights have moved on is as I become aware of things around neuroscience, and you kind of what was seen as like ancient wisdom or common sense, you're now getting people who are going, yeah, but what happens when you show kindness to someone, which people go, well, that's a good thing to do, and it's better more blessed to give than to receive. Now neuroscience is showing what happens in the brain when you show kindness and generosity to other people. You see a release of dopamine, oxytocin. It's good for you. So I suppose my material evolves and some of the language I use develops, and a new vocabulary comes to how I express my material. But a lot of the insights remain the same. The people from 2,000, 3,000 years ago trying to understand life and the meaning and purpose and had a language for it then. And it's still a language that we're trying to evolve now, but the basic things around, 3,000 years ago, what is my identity? What is my purpose? How do we get on with each other? They are not questions that we've only started asking in the last 10 years. Throughout human history, that's been the case. And I think with particularly in the Western world, because we've now seen religion in some contexts as bad, or it's just primitive beliefs, we've kind of pushed that to one side and become more open to perhaps some other ideas that we see as slightly more, I don't know, in keeping with rational thinking. Personally, I think there is a lot of aspects and teachings of religion that we perhaps need to revisit, but we tend to demonize certain people's beliefs, dismiss it as primitive, and ignore some of the wise truths that are in it.
Yeah, I suppose the words in religions are great. The customs are the bit that people struggle to get their heads around often, because quite often you have to wear an outfit, and you've got rules and laws which don't make sense. And I don't want to say anything with offending anybody here, but there's so many rules and laws which don't have any, which don't actually make sense. Whereas the teachings of be kind is what you're saying.
I mean, if you were to look at, say, for instance, and I'd have more knowledge of this person's teachings than, say, of Buddha or of Muhammad, but if you look at the teachings of Jesus, they are, and it's strange even just using the name Jesus sometimes in certain contexts. I mean, some people are using it obviously just as a swear word. And when I use it, I'm thinking people are going to freeze now and go, he's mentioned the J word. Yeah. He's obviously a bit like, he's not with it. He's a bit da-da. And yet I think some of what he talked about, his whole focus on women and the marginalised, and giving people that sense of you don't actually need those rules and regulations. I find some of what he had to say really, really profound. And it's interesting. I did a couple of bonus chapters. If people bought the book in the first 10 days of it coming out and emailed over their Amazon receipts, they get a bonus chapter. And one of them was called, Mind the Plank. And it's all about a story that actually, well, it was known as Yeshua, Jewish rabbi, but we refer to him as Jesus, talked about how remove the plank from your own eye before you try and remove the speck in your brother's eye. And I found, that as a story and how it relates to me, and how I am so quick to criticize others and talk about why people do what they do and behave the way they do. And sometimes it's like, well, have a look at yourself in the mirror, mate. Think about the plank in your own eye. Exactly. So, the teachings, I think, have been there, and the wisdom and the things that Buddha have said as well are profound.
The last podcast I did was with John Lloyd, and I'm not going to do this justice, but he was talking about Jesus. Yeah. I don't know if you heard the podcast. And he was saying Jesus came up with this great idea, which was like, hey, let's all be kind to each other. And the Romans went, this is popular. Let's have some outfits and some books and some buildings. And like, no, let's just be kind to each other. And it's like, and that kind of is the bit that where religion for me falls down, is when you start.
But you could argue also, he talked about being nice, but he also talked about challenging injustice. He actually challenged the religious view of the day, and ultimately that's where he was killed.
It seems to me, and I'm really going to regret going down this path, but I'm just going to touch on it. But it seems to me with religions, it's that sort of game. When the bloke down the pub says, I can eat a spice of curry than you, or I can drink more than you. Religion, I can be more extreme than you. I can do more praying than you. I can wear more outfits than you. My religion is so important to me that I'm going to sacrifice more of my life for my religion than you are, and I'm going to have more laws, and I'm not allowed to do this, and I'm not allowed to do that, and that's what seems to be the culture that I don't get with religion. And we had. I was called an atheist on here.
I know you don't like labels, which I don't as well.
It's just really funny when I got called an atheist, and then I was the question was, what's it like? Do you feel free? And I was like, I don't really, probably hadn't thought about it yet, but I don't have laws. I have my own laws, and obviously the laws of the land. Some of them I agree with, some of them I don't. But I don't have any laws to get me to a better place after life.
I think that when you talk about what I think you've just described as, religion and how some people are, I think, to be fair, you're still probably talking about a minority of people. It's a bit like, you're a football fan, I'm a football fan. But we will always find those extreme fans who, I remember doing some work in Glasgow, and one guy actually had a room which was almost like a shrine to Glasgow Rangers. Now, the reality is, as a Wigan Athletic fan with a fondness for Bradford City, which is a long story, I don't actually have a shrine for Wigan or for Bradford City. I'm a football fan, but I don't take it to extreme. And I think there are people who have a faith and have a belief that kind of does influence their filter and how they see life and how they see themselves. I don't think all of them go to that extreme. So that's only some.
Well, that's a great analogy. As humans, are we predisposed to try and get to the extreme? So as a football fan, you start going, right, I'm going to wear the shirt, I'm going to learn the team, I'm going to learn everything about it. Hey, I went to see a reserve team match. Have you been to it? Do you go away? All that nonsense which comes with football. If you're into music, it's like, did you know them before they were called this? Have you got the back catalogue? Have you got the... Is that what we want to do as humans? We want to belong, and then we want to show that we belong more than you belong.
Well, I think there is, when you talk about belong, you're spot on that. We have deep within us a sense of wanting to connect and therefore belong. Part of the problem with that is to belong, we are us, and then we define, our sense of identity with also who we're not. So we get into, so I support Wigan. You got to hate Bolton. Do you know what I mean? I support Rangers, then you've got to hate Celtic. So, we want to belong. And I think there is that sense within some people. Again, going back to the teachings of Yeshua, the rabbi, or Jesus, however you want to refer to him, is he actually talked about not rules. He talked about grace, that you're accepted who you are right now. And yet, I have so much empathy and understanding for people who are atheists and who hate religion, because I can only really look at one aspect of religion, which would be Christianity, which I'm most familiar with. And I would say, the church and some Christians have got to be one of the worst PR companies on the planet. They literally, turn people off. And it's tragic that when you sometimes describe, what do you think of when you think of Jesus? And if you look at his teachings, you come up with a list of, was he the world's first ever feminist? Talked about truth, love, trying to reach out to the marginalised, compassion, grace, mercy. And then you sometimes think about Christians and you think bigoted, narrow-minded, anti-gay, and you kind of go, whoa, how did this person who they say they follow, how could you express it in a completely the wrong way? It's almost like being a Glasgow Rangers fan and going around wearing green and white hoops all day. It just does not make sense.
Do you think as humans we need someone to tell us to be kind? Don't you think it's in us to like equality? Don't you think we're taught not to be equal? Don't you think we're taught to be slightly racist? Aren't we taught to be angry and all these things? Because whenever you find a place, when you do mindfulness or something like that, and you find a place where you have that wonderful week where you feel really loving and caring all the time, and it feels great.
Yeah.
Isn't that where we're supposed to be, where Jesus wanted us to be, but we're being taught not to be?
I think intuitively, when you show kindness, because you're dead right, you don't need some religion or some teacher or even some parent. When you show kindness, it makes you feel good, and intuitively, the biggest accusation I get about my materialism, it's all common sense. I could have flipping done, if I thought about it long enough, I could have written that book myself. Then flipping it, why didn't you then? So I think sometimes, we are taught, again, when it comes back to this sense of we do need to belong. But in order to belong and get my identity, that identity also comes from who I'm not. Yeah. And that's when the hate can come in and we build walls. And it just does me flipping head in.
We have created an environment, though, where hate is prolific, really, isn't it? It comes with capitalism, where everyone wants to have more money than somebody else. It comes with, I'm not saying other systems are better, but it comes with our media. And when you have children, as we were just talking about, it suddenly becomes, you become more mindful of it all. You start seeing how bitchy sometimes TV and magazines and everything can be towards each other, and how horrific they are.
I think materialism, it was...
That's the word I was looking for, yeah, sorry.
Have you come across Johann Hari, is it? Hari. He's got a book out called Lost Connections. And he talks about the fact that people, the more materialistic they become, in fact, evidence would suggest the unhappier they can become. And he calls, some people's values are really like, it's like junk food for the soul. It isn't actually good for us. Yeah. And those things that we talk about having compassion, showing mercy, showing love, self-acceptance. Because I think some of the reasons why we're so critical of other people is because deep down we're not comfortable with who we are, and we kind of express that angst by the way we view everybody else. And so I think it, particularly in the Western world, if we are led to believe that that happiness is a destination rather than something now that you can experience, and the only way you can get happy is to have more and be more, then why do you think it is that we are struggling with so many of the challenges we've got in our society at the moment?
Yeah, so someone said the other day, I can't remember where I heard it or read it or something, if you're getting angry with someone, make sure you're not envious first. Give yourself a little check to make sure that.
I think that's a great piece of advice, and it comes back to maybe look at the plank in your own eye before you remove the speck from someone else. So what you heard last week, there was some bloke in Palestine talking about 2,000 years ago.
And the other thing, I've been doing this podcast for such a long time now, and a year. I think you're our 100th episode, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
We try not to celebrate it because we don't attach ourselves.
Well, have a beer. Like Paul, have a beer, or maybe you prefer whiskey.
Paul, we don't attach ourselves to numbers. It's not important. But
it is the 100th.
But it is the 100th. Yeah, I think this is the 100th. So I was saying to my friends the other day, one of them was saying, I've just seen this classic Porsche. Shall I buy it? What do you think? And all my mates were on a WhatsApp group. They're all putting their oar in, going, well, it could be worth this and this and that. And I'm going, guys, we're like in our late 40s, early 50s. We need to be getting rid of stuff, not getting more stuff. Free yourself of all this crap. Your kids are getting old. Get rid of it all. We're free now. And they thought I was mental.
Well, it's all about what I'm not here to, judge people. It's what you think will actually make you happy. And maybe for some people, getting that Porsche is going to be the big thing. For me, I'm more of a kind of, in terms of what makes me happy, I'd rather go to the Lake District than Dubai. It's like, but some people love Dubai. Great, I like the Lake District.
Why do you want a second car? That's second set of insurance, second set of bills to go with it, second set of petrol. You've got to think about when you're going to drive it. Have one car, it's just easier.
But we are, there is it's a phrase I use in the book, the law of more. We are lured to think. The laws of more, to think that, if I have more, automatically having more will mean I'll have more happiness and more life satisfaction. And perhaps as you're discovering, that's not always the case. However, I'm not going to go around to people and say, well, you shouldn't have a second car. It's up to you. It's your life, isn't it?
Yeah, I had that thought for years. If I just get this, if I just get that, if I just get this, I'll be happy. And then one day you realise, well, actually, I suppose it was for the last 2 or 3 years I've been reading all these sorts of books and stuff. And then I realised that actually it doesn't bring you happiness at all. It's far from it.
But you mentioned about capitalism before, and I'm not going to be critical of that, and I realise there's no system is perfect. But maybe what capitalism is born on the fact that we always have to create a need, isn't it? So we have to appeal. We have to either create desire in people or dissatisfaction. So unhappy with the way you look, buy this. Or if you had this or you wore that, you would be far more appealing to other people. So at the heart of capitalism is not a formula that goes, you know what, Tim? You're okay, mate. Just the way you are, you're fine. Whatever car you drive, you're cool. That isn't how to fuel our desire to want to fill our lives with more.
What I don't understand about your book is why everybody doesn't do their books like this. One, I think the thing you do, which is just immense, brilliant, is you make it so easy to read. It's so hard to put your book down. The chapters are short. All the way through it, there's little things like great life tips and stuff like that. It's really well written. It's easy to understand. It's just brilliant. Why don't more people do a book like that? What
appeals to you though doesn't actually appeal to everybody else. Interestingly,
I cannot envisage someone getting that and not going, "This is a brilliant book to read."
Well, and I hope that is the case. And
that's
I've
why
had some great
that's why
feedback.
Sumo was so successful, because it's so easy.
Well, one of the things I say is, I'm not writing for the intellectual elite. I'm writing for the ordinary person in the street.
Yeah,
But
which
some people do like those kind of, it was very complicated. I understand this book, and people go, oh, but it was a bit too deep for me or a bit too complicated. Some people get that sense of superiority by going, oh, well, I enjoyed this. And I'm like, well, I go for something that's really easy and accessible. What I'm really chuffed about, people say, well, how's the book doing? How's it selling? It's selling all right. It's not breaking any records. But you know what really appeals to me is a friend of mine, his 15-year-old daughter, her friend is into my books. So she bought How to Have a Great Life for a 15-year-old friend who apparently kind of like cried and was so flipping touched because I'd signed it. And then another friend of mine, I gave her a copy. She took it home. She's living with her mum at the moment, who's 88. And this friend of mine contacts me and goes, I'd love to say I've read your book, but I can't get it off my 88-year-old mother. And I'm like, 15-year-old, 88, I'll take it. But you see, some people have a real problem with something that seems easy and accessible. Like, well, it's just common sense, and they dismiss it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I hope more people will think the way you think,
well,
but not everybody does.
It's not just common sense. I think that's doing yourself a disservice there, because it's a reminder of certain things, and I learned a lot right at the beginning of the book. You do this thing where you prove our brains don't work accurately. You just have I won't ruin it for anyone if they read it, but there's a list of things you write down, and when you read them, you're not actually reading them, and it's a great way of showing. Your brain is not observing the world as it should be observing the world.
We fill in the blanks and we miss the obvious.
Explain that principle.
Well, I talk about, one of the opening chapters is actually called Don't Take Miracles for Granted. And it's this whole thing about we just do life on autopilot without actually thinking. And I do think we've lost our sense of awe. I mean, here's an example. It's a metaphor I've come up with. It's not in the book. You might kind of go, I like it, or that's an absolutely stupid metaphor. But for me personally, I want us to kind of like, almost get off autopilot, get off fast forward. And a way in which I'm thinking about life at the moment is imagine just yourself, Tim. You're in the centre circle at Wembley Stadium. Mm-hmm. Capacity's 90,000, but there's only you, maybe in the stadium, and you're looking around with that sense of just how huge all this is. Sun shining down, and you see, just with a beam of sunlight, you see a speck of dust. If you were to look at our planet Earth within our galaxy and within the universe, it's like the size of that speck of dust. And every person who's ever lived on this planet, every battle that's happened, every love story that's occurred, all of human history has taken place in this vast, vast universe on that speck of dust. And that is not my insight, the visual metaphor of the sense of, because the thing is, you're in Wembley Stadium, but imagine that speck of dust, there's actually another million Wembley stadiums, to kind of give you a bit of an idea of the sense and the scale of our universe. And that, as far as we know, the only bit of life that's ever been sustained is on planet Earth. Now, that was triggered, just so people know, because everyone go, well, that's quite profound. I'm a reader, I watch stuff. Carl Sagan, Sagan. If you go into Google, YouTube, the pale blue dot, he actually doesn't use the metaphor of dust. He doesn't use the metaphor of Wembley Stadium. But he got Voyager 1, the space probe, in 1990, February the 14th. It took a photo of planet Earth from 4 billion miles away.
Wow.
Right? And it's the size of a small pixel. It's a pale blue dot. And I kind of like people to, so for me, what that makes me realise is, the world's in a big place or whatever. No, everything that's ever happened has happened on that bit of dust in the size of the context of life, Wembley Stadium and beyond. It's all on that speck of dust. And Bill Bryson, who wrote the short history of nearly everything, in his opening chapter, he said, and he's not a religious man as far as I'm aware, he used the word, he said, it's a miracle. Life on this planet is a miracle. And But I think we take miracles for granted. We just get caught up in the minutiae of day-to-day life. We do stuff on fast forward. We don't stop. We don't think. We don't reflect. We don't even challenge our own perceptions of things.
We don't live.
Well, you ask a question, is there life after death? Mm-hmm. Well, I sometimes wonder, for some people, is there really life before death? Mm-hmm. Or are we just merely existing? And we're getting caught up with trivial stuff for the media pumps in our, as Johan Hari talks about, our sometimes, junk food for the soul. And it's just a case of, I'm not knocking our culture. It's great for some people, but, this is an amazing opportunity to be on this planet. For you and I and Mark to be here now in this kitchen, evolution is an amazing thing. And, pardon me. And, the amount of times we could have been wiped out, but, killed through all kinds of reasons, through other tribes, through woolly mammoths, whatever. And yet we've had those genes passed on to us. And we are the result of thousands of years of evolutionary history. Millions of years. And we're here. And I just say, let's not take it for granted. Let's also have a sense of curiosity and open-mindedness rather than this black and white sense of certainty about life and meaning and God and death. And just kind of go, we live in the great vast universe on a speck of dust. And and let's become a little bit more humble about that. And let's be more open-minded and more curious.
When I say on the back of the book, when you asked me to endorse your book, and I went, yeah, of course I will. And I spent a long time sitting there thinking, what shall I write? And I wrote sentence after sentence, and then eventually I came up with, life-changing advice. And I do mean that. And the reason why I mean that is because I read a lot of these books, as you know. However, all the way through it, you give such great examples of things. And just going to give you one on this. You said, when next time you eat, savor your food. And I've done that, and it's... None of us do it. Like, we all bang on about what we like eating. I work on a food show, as you know. Everyone's talking about food all the time. No one's tasting the food. We're tasting with our eyes. We're not tasting with our mouths. That is for sure. Or our senses, our noses, and our tongues. We are just stuffing that crap inside us and going, oh, it's sugary or it's sweet. That's what we're doing. You said savor it. Just start savoring it. And I did it. And wow, when you start eating fruit and you're doing that,
wow,
how sweet is fruit? It's amazing. I love fruit. But anyway,
and that's a classic example of how we're just so used to doing life on autopilot, stuffing it down.
Yeah.
And so the specific example, I go, just maybe briefly for a couple of seconds, just close your eyes.
Yeah, you say that, yeah.
I'm sometimes captured now by a flower that I see in somebody's garden, and I stop, and I got asked recently, what you up to? As I'm just staring at this flower. It's like, well, that's a bit weird.
That's what I mean by sometimes we're not living. Sometimes
we're not experiencing this amazingness.
Autopilot's a great way of putting it. And you've got to just slow down and go, let's live. Take the wrong way home from work and live.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe, and that doesn't necessarily cost you anything. Maybe you don't have to fill your life with loads of stuff. Maybe the life is giving you lots free.
Get up 4 hours earlier and walk to work. I don't know, do something. Anyway, maybe not. Right, you've had a lot of life experiences. I'm not off the book, but I just want to come back to this. Because I was reading this in your book. You're a probation officer for a while. You nursed terminally ill cancer patients. And you managed 30 women on economy beef burger lines at a frozen food company. All interesting jobs, all must have added to your experiences on life, especially the death intrigues me. And I know I'm not scared of saying this now. I like the thought of death now, and I like thinking about death, because I think if you think about death, it's easier to live. I think we've discussed this before.
Yeah.
Did all those three jobs really affect the way you thought about life?
So my degree gave me a degree in behavioural and social psychology, but also trained me to be either a probation officer or a social worker. So the time I spent as a probation officer in Halifax in West Yorkshire, did impact and shape me. I was amazed to begin with at how the staff room was. because it was like comedy hour. And I'm like, but you're dealing with some really horrendous and horrific situations. And in fact, one of my colleagues had actually been the probation officer for Peter Sutcliffe, who, as we know, the Yorkshire Ripper. Yeah. And before he'd done it, he'd committed another crime previously. And you had some horrendous sort of situations that people were dealing with, sometimes on a daily basis. You get the local paper and you hear about a crime and you wouldn't go, that's terrible. You'd go, which one of ours has probably done it? Which one of my clients has committed that crime? And one of the things I learned was how people can use humour as a defence mechanism, but also what can happen, which I think is sad, is people that got very, very cynical about life. So I had that as part of my training. And, you know, going into Armley Prison in Leeds and spending time in some of those conditions and seeing where people were at had a profound impact on me. And then just towards the end of that particular year, they said, we want to give you a 6-week placement and you can choose where you want to be. And I worked in a hospice in Leeds, Wheatfields Hospice. And I was there just for 6 weeks. And again, it's such a contrast to the world of probation, where you just saw this kind of kindness and this compassion. And you thought, well, Paul, you're not a trained nurse. You're trained to become a probation officer. But just sitting with people, listening to some of their stories, understanding, like there was one guy who I got very attached to called Bill. And Bill was dying. That's why he was there. And but he was going to spend one last weekend at home, and he was going to see his family and his grandkids. And shortly after he did that, then he died. And the nurses said, well, that was totally expected, because he just had one little purpose left to live for, which was to live long enough just to go home one more time and see his family and his grandkids. And they kind of knew as soon as he came back to that hospice, they thought he could be gone within hours, because he's done that. So that shaped me. The stuff I did with the 30 women on the economy beef burger line, I kind of joke in my seminars and keynote talks. I go, okay, I got a chance to manage 30 women. You know, the factory manager said, I know you're in HR, you spend a lot of time in an office. How about you spend some time in the factory? Managing the 30 women on the economy beef burger line. I'm like, bring it on. And then I go, 2 main lessons I learned from that experience. Number 1, don't eat economy beef burgers. And secondly, you know, when arrogance meets ignorance, that is a really dangerous cocktail. And I was a bit of both, because I thought managing 30 women should be relatively straightforward. Yeah. I've got a degree, background in psychology, being a probation officer. And what I learned was you can have all that education, and we go back to our earlier point, you can, and I've passed my exams and I've got my degree. Did that in any way, shape or form help me to understand how to manage and motivate and lead 30 women? Absolutely not. They absolutely wiped the floor with me. I'll tell you, they probably, you know, they may have had not a single qualification between them. And one of the things I say in all my books and in my talks is, you know, I'm not against training and qualifications. They are hugely important. But if you want to get the best out of yourself, get the best out of life, get the best out of others, training and qualifications will only take you so far.
Yeah. I wonder if we should be around death more and consider it more. If you're lying on your deathbed, if you're thinking about dying, then you can think about, am I living properly before I die? But we're also so terrified of death, aren't we? Including myself still. But we're so terrified of it. But it's going to happen to us all. It's one thing I can guarantee at the moment. Maybe in the future not. But at the moment, you're going to die. And yet we just try and ignore it constantly, don't we?
I think probably more accurately, we in our culture ignore it. I think there's lots of other cultures around the world who will talk about it a lot more, and are maybe more comfortable with it. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? I'm thinking, having lost some close friends in their early 50s, and I'm 54, but you'd rarely even use the phrase, "Yeah, my friend died." It's like they've passed away, they've gone. I mean, one woman one of my closest friends, Clive, I think I mentioned his name on the previous podcast, his partner rang me. He died on a Saturday night. She rang me on the Sunday morning. And she was going on, and she just went, "We've lost Clive." and he was 51. So my first reaction was not, he's dead. My brain couldn't compute.
Yeah.
It's like, sorry, you've lost it. What do you mean? I didn't quite understand what you were saying just to begin with. And I do wonder whether being more mindful of, we do have a sell-by date. So let's make the most out of life now. Rather, and I think sometimes we are in denial. We do live as if we are indestructible, and life will go on and on and on, and it doesn't. And if we could wake up to death and its reality and its inevitability, might help us to enjoy this flipping life a bit more.
Yeah, I love the simplicity of the bit where you, and sorry, I might be sort of putting words in your mouth here, but it's rather than sort of spending your life chasing ridiculous things, maybe material things. You've got the 7 wonders: see, hear, touch, taste, feel, laugh, love, and what you put in your book.
Yes.
When you read that, you go, that is what life's about.
Absolutely.
And I'm repeating myself, but I did it with the food to taste it. I'm like, oh, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Because you forget, you just keep doing it. You forget when touching something's really nice, and just looking at a flower and all that sort of stuff. And also, the other one, having a laugh with your mates, that's what you live for, isn't it?
It's great medicine.
Or
It's
your
food
kids.
for the soul.
Yeah.
And also when you see a child. I mean, I was in Boston earlier this year speaking at an event out there, and I had a free day, and there was this kind of like this paved area that had, all of a sudden you'd see water squirt out almost out of the pavement, like little mini fountains. And children, and then ultimately adults, just absolutely loved running through that. And all of a sudden they get wet, and the sheer laughter and pleasure from the simplicity of something like that.
Are you finding social media is not helping us at all? Because there is that, I find it now, I'm very aware of it all, reading sort of online newspapers and also social media. Sometimes I get very anxious by it because I think I'm missing out, and then I go, right, come off it. You're not missing out. You're just looking at a series of images, and the FOMO, as it's called, fear of missing out. And I think, oh, look, everybody's on holiday, or everybody's doing this, or everybody's at a party, and I'm not there. Is it becoming worse for us? Do you think, social media making life worse for us?
It has the potential, definitely.
Yeah.
I think social media can actually be incredibly positive. It can highlight injustices. It can, I love sometimes reading people's tweets and links to blogs and little videos. There's that side of it. But you are so right. I think it does fuel our fears. And as you say, forget sumo, it's FOMO, fear of missing out. And one of the things I talk about in the book, quit playing the game you can't win, where the comparison game, and we compare our unedited lives with the edited lives of other people, and people are clearly just going to present themselves often in the best possible light, and it can fuel our anxiety. I mean, at the end of the day, we're living generally longer, healthier lives. We've never been richer, and yet anxiety and depression are on the increase. What's all that about? And absolutely, social media has fueled it. But again, I don't want to just kind of like demonize it. Of course, take some time out, go for your walk, pick up some litter when you're doing so. But there's loads of positives about social media as well. It's not either evil.
Yeah, I agree.
Or good. There's loads of good, but beware of how it can be distorted, which is why Sumo for Schools, we're looking down the digital route to engage children more, because we know that's their world.
And life's not just about trying to be happy, is it, as well? I like your chapter, Why Fear Isn't Always Your Enemy. Fear can be a good thing.
You could argue that as a race, as a species, we owe our very survival to fear. And everyone talks about you must be fearless. Well, yeah, but being fearless can be a really stupid thing to do when you lose your life as a result of it sometimes. And I think you're right, this desire that we must be constantly happy. No, life is a roller coaster. We need to be teaching kids, which is why I'm doing this Sumo for Schools, that you will at times have some tough challenges. And when tough challenges happen, it doesn't mean automatically, I'm feeling bad now and I'm not happy, therefore I'm depressed and I need this and I need that. No. welcome to life. Yes, of course you'll fear some things. That you know, courage isn't the absence of fear. It's recognizing you feel the fear, but you do it anyway. And I think also we just need to understand that we're not going to be in this perfect place of permanent bliss. Sometimes life's a bit crap. And I tweeted something today that said, though, just because you're having a crap day doesn't mean you've got a crap life. It just means you're having a crap day. And that's okay.
But crap stuff is also part of life. And it's the good bit of life. Because if everything's lovely, then life will be boring. You've got to have the ups and downs.
It helps you appreciate the good stuff when you've had the tough stuff. And suddenly when you've gone through the tough stuff, it shapes you and equips you to, you know, you're better. People go through some painful stuff in life, but sometimes, you know what, they are better for it.
I've been through some horrific stuff. Actually, I want to go back there very quickly. Do you think you're meant to have gone through all the stuff you've gone through to end up here? Do you think, are you one of those believers in life sort of been planned out for you a bit because you're doing such great work with the schools and everybody else and your books? Do you think it's been a plan? It's a purpose, a life purpose?
On one level, no. I think just things have happened. I think life at times can be random. I talk about both in sumo, and I have a reference to this in the new book, this little formula E plus R equals O. It's the event plus how I respond that influences my outcome. And I don't think there's a divine plan that went, you know what, you're gonna be ill with ME and you're gonna do this and you're gonna do that. It happened. And I've had to decide, and again, I want to never give the impression it's all about me. So much support from other people in helping me through some of these things, particularly my wife and my family and some of my friends. But it's happened, you know, shit happens, you know, and if life is a cheesy thing, but there's some real truth in it. If life gives you a lemon, make lemonade. And so I don't think it's like it was destined that Paul McGee would go through all of this and as a result would do X, Y, and Z. But the fact is, Paul McGee did go through it. So let's try and make something out of it.
Okay, we all know everyone's life is going to have shit. Shit happens, as you say. Everyone's going to have horrible things in their life. Just everyone will have death in their life. That's just a taken. But everyone will have horrible things, illnesses, diseases, whatever, blah, blah, blah. If they didn't, then their life would probably be not as enriching as people whose does. Do we think that? Is that what we think?
I do.
Okay.
But I think people think. No, I think that.
Yeah.
That life, you know, it's the mess of life that sometimes gives you your message, and sometimes it's the dark times that helps you appreciate the light more. And sometimes when you're going through a real crap time, other people get around you and support you in a way they've never done, and you bond close with people. And that's all part of the tapestry of life. It's brilliant. It's awesome. But I think we are sold sometimes by self-help gurus and by the media that, you know, the best life is the easy life. And when you're always happy, and it's like,
well, that's why right. Sometimes I wonder about mindfulness and that when you're like, I'm never going to get overexcited about anything, or I'm never going to get angry, I'm never going to get uptight, I'm always going to keep calm. I think sometimes, no, you need a bit of a roller coaster in your life. Otherwise, it's going to be very dull. I mean, I don't know how the life of a Buddhist monk or something like that, but say you stay calm for 20, 30 years, do you get to your deathbed and go, God, that was boring?
Yeah, I think you do.
Where's the roller coaster?
What I love about, you know, supporting a football team, people go, yeah, but what you're doing is you're putting your happiness isn't in your control, it's in the hands of someone else. And when Wigan beat West Brom 1-0, you're happy, and then they lose to flipping Millwall 2-1, you're unhappy. But I like that edginess. I like that whole different engagement. And I like being at the football match and getting passionate. And it's like, that's what life's about. It's all part of its richness. You're right. One ingredient, you know, and I talk about, you know, prune back the happy clappy tree sometimes is one of the chapters in the book where everyone's, oh, you've got to be happy. Yeah, actually, it's like making a cake and you've only got one single ingredient in it, you know, too much sugar. It's sweet, it's sickly. So you need the contrast, you need the darkness as well as the light, you need the struggle, because without a struggle, you ain't got a story.
So I've got this... Mark's going to enjoy this. So I've got this theory, right, on pets.
on
And
pets.
So I was reading your book and I was reading about this sort of stuff, and it triggers thoughts. I think too much. I'm trying to, now you've started talking about capitalism, I'm trying to cure that, which I don't think I'll be able to, but cure it. There you go. It's a disease. But I was thinking a lot about pets, and I was thinking about how you need a bit of fear, you need a bit of you need lots of things going on in your life to make it happy, a bit of struggle and all this sort of stuff to get a complete and a good life. What we do with our pets is basically make their lives as comfortable as possible. They demand off us. They just, are we being bad people? Like Mark.
Mark, you obviously express what I'm sometimes thinking.
I watched Mark come in and look at my cat, and then he's got this beautiful, like, he looks at her so glowingly, and I'm just thinking, no, let her starve a bit, or let her do this a bit. Like, give her a life.
I
give
mean,
her a
to be
life.
fair, I saw her when I came in. I thought, what a lovely rib cage you've got. But maybe we are, but maybe also there's something within us that makes us feel good to show kindness and to alleviate potential suffering.
Right, there's a point to this.
In someone,
there's a point to
an
that.
animal or someone else.
I agree with you, but maybe we're not giving them the best lives by doing that. And then secondly, I sort of moved that thought process onto children. It seems to me we are obsessed about our children now, and obsessed with them having a great life. When I was a kid growing up, I did what my parents did at weekends and sat in a car waiting for them, or sat on the side of actually they played a lot of squash. I sat in the squash courts looking at them and stuff like that, bored out of my brains. Nowadays, it's trying to speak to my friends and say, do you want to do something at weekends? They're like, oh no, I've got to do that, something for my son, my daughter. It's basically all about our children. Are we trying to provide too good a life for our children? Are we not letting them have the sort of life that they should have, which is one of sometimes boredom, sometimes stress, sometimes happiness, that are like the ebbs and flows of life?
I understand why, as parents, we want to do our best for our children. But I wrote in my book, Self-Confidence, I wrote, too much kindness kills confidence. And I remember, so for instance, an example of that, my daughter, Ruth, she didn't want to go swimming for a swimming lesson. Now, if I want to just be in her good books and oh, well, if you don't want to go, if it upsets you, or I don't want to go and I don't like the teacher. Oh, well, no, never mind, they're there. That's fine. Stay at home. That would have been showing some kindness, but she would have never grown in her confidence to be able to deal with water and go swimming with her mates. So I would say to her, she goes, Daddy, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. I don't feel like it, and I don't like the teacher. I'm going, that's fine. We'll be ready in 5 minutes to go. Yeah, but Daddy, I don't want to go.
That's what I do.
Ruthie, that's absolutely fine, darling. We are going. It's not negotiation. But I don't want to go. I'm like, Ruth, you're 27. Come on, we're going.
Good punchline. No, yes, get it.
Boom. The fact is, she would go. And actually, she'd have a great time.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we are trying to, wrap our kids in cotton wool. And, I don't want to get... So, when I was a lad, we had to get up at 4 in the morning. If we got an apple at Christmas, we were thrilled. I'm not going down that line. We want, and it's understandable, you want the best for your children.
Yeah.
But I just wonder whether too much kindness kills confidence, that children have to realise, that football game you played and you got to the final and you lost 3-0. You didn't win the trophy. You just have to accept sometimes that will happen. And it's great they competed and we don't want parents shouting abuse at the referee. But sometimes you will lose. Now, I'm not saying you set out with a 3-year-old and you're going, I will flip and beat you at drafts. But I know what I think your attitude, I know what your attitude's like towards your kids.
Paul, I can only beat what's in front of me. They got to learn early.
Indeed. But I think you make an important point. And I think one of the reasons now...
I don't want to sanitize my children's lives too much, because I think life is for living.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes why are children less resilient now is because we've made life so flipping easy for them that when they do get a setback or a challenge, some of them go into absolute meltdown. And then we kind of go, oh, they're struggling with mental health issues. No, they might be, but there's a very, very good chance that they're just dealing with life. And sometimes life throws you curveballs. And it's a question of what skills and tools do I need in order to overcome some of these challenges, rather than try and remove all those obstacles from their life. They don't grow. They're not stretched when you remove all the obstacles.
When we were kids, my friend Danny, his dad was brilliant. And his dad was quite wealthy, actually. He was doing all right. And Danny used to say to him, Dad, I haven't got any money. I'm really short. I want to go out. I haven't got any money. And he used to go, wow, what's that like then? I have no idea what, you haven't got any money. He goes, I've got loads of money. What's it like not having money? And he used to go, can you lend me some money? He goes, absolutely not, no. And then he'd call his wife in and go, hey, Danny's got no money, he can't go out. And I used to laugh at it, because I used to think it was so funny that he was teaching him basically, you haven't got any money, you can't go out, tough luck.
There's a friend of mine, Mark, who one of his sons wanted a pet snake. So Mark basically said to him, all right, Elliot.
By the way, a snake is not a pet, it's an entrapped animal. My theory on pets,
Okay.
stick them in the garden. If they come back, they're a pet. If they don't, that you've just entrapped an animal. So an entrapped snake he wanted.
He wanted a pet snake, which some people thinks are okay, and some people have a big issue with.
I don't have an issue with it. It's just not a pet.
But the thing was, what Mark said, and again, rather than go, oh yes, we'll go out and get you one, was like, well, Elliot was at about 9 or 10. You've got to do a presentation. You've got to basically present a case to the rest of the family why we should have it.
Brilliant.
And it was like, and how will you care for it, and what do we need to be aware of?
Excellent.
And again, it's educating the kids. He hasn't given his children, I think I'm right in saying, pocket money since they were 10 years old.
Right.
They have to earn things, and they do it. And that's how they've grown up. So yeah, can we make life a bit too easy for kids? 100%.
I worked with this guy years ago. I was in a finance company. It was just sort of a job I did for a while. It was in a sort of bank, and I was sort of vaguely underwriting mortgages, as in doing the early checks on all these sort of mortgages. Actually, on the documentation, which I don't know. Anyway, I was doing this job. It was kind of dull. But there was this guy I worked with, and he said two things to me which really I can't ever get out of my mind. He was a really old guy. He was the end of his career. He was working with us a lot, young kids, and he was just waiting for retirement. And he hated his job. But he used to say two things to me. One, Tim, don't worry about it. If it's important, someone else will do it. As he was mucking up everything, and then which I quite liked. And then the other thing he'd say to me, I'd go to him, Ian. He'd go, what's the matter? God, Ian, I asked this girl out this weekend, and she said no, and I really liked her. And he'd go, Tim, it's all part of life's rich tapestry. And he'd always say that to me. It's all part of life's rich tapestry, and it was his catchphrase.
Well,
on everything.
I think I used that phrase a little bit earlier. And
did you use that earlier?
Yeah, I think I did.
Okay.
And he has a point.
Yeah.
And we can't see it at the time, and no one likes to be rejected. We know we're not built. We haven't evolved to go, oh yes, bring me rejection. And some people deal with it better than others. But rejection is part of life, and it's not always easy.
In your job, are you pretty much UK based?
I do work in the US, and I do work in Australia. But I mean, I've spoken in the last 27 years in 41 countries.
Are our cultures different, as in our mindsets? Do you find that as you go around to different countries, that even the difference between America and Britain, or Australia, do you find that we're different, or have we all got the similar problems?
I think we have very much similar problems in the US, the UK, and say Australia. Where I find some differences is when I've worked in Africa. So one of my 7 questions to help you sumo, and I may have mentioned it on the previous podcast, is when you've got an issue or a challenge, just ask yourself, on a scale of 1 to 10, where 10's death, where is it? And loads of people in the US, UK, and Australia love that question. And what I do is I give these 7 questions out to people, and I go, which 2 particularly resonate with you out of the 7? And invariably, a lot of people in those 3 countries will put their hands up to question number 1. I was doing sumo in Kenya, and I went through and I went, okay, let's go through those 7 questions really briefly again. So show of hands, who had number 1, scale of 1 to 10, where 10's death as one of your top 2 questions? And hardly anyone put their hands up. And they just they saw life a bit differently, they saw death differently. It just happened so often anyway. They didn't often live with a great sense of urgency. And so for me, I do see there's a lot of similarities in some countries and cultures, but perhaps in places like particularly some parts of Africa, mindset would be different to a lot of things in life.
Yeah, and one of the reasons I asked you this question is something you said in your sumo book, is the victim culture, and is that what you called it? I can't remember what you called it.
Well, in the sumo book, I talk about, change your t-shirt.
Change,
and
that
I
was
talk
it,
about the
change
fact
your
that some
t-shirt.
people can end up wearing a t-shirt. It's great if your t-shirt, your life mantra says change is possible, or I'm totally mad, I'm totally making a difference. But I think for some people it is just victim. And I always like to stress there are genuine victims in life.
Yeah.
But there are people who, feel a sense of entitlement. Things didn't go well. Let's play the BSE game, blame someone else, and they don't take responsibility. And in this book, I have a slightly different angle on it, which is, show some leadership. And people go, yeah, but I'm not a leader. You know what? If you've got a breath, and a pulse, you're a leader. We're not all called to lead other people, but we're all called to show some self-leadership.
It's so easy to fall into victim mentality, though, isn't it? But everything you do, you go, oh, God, I can't believe I'm not getting this, and I can't believe this, and I'm not getting it because of that. And I do it in my career, and I don't do it as much anymore. But I did used to do it a lot. Yeah. I'm not being picked because of this, and
Sure.
and it's hard to. It's a very easy thing to fall into.
Steve Peters, who wrote the book The Chimp Paradox, he talks about your chimp. And you've also got a book by Daniel Kahneman called Thinking Fast and Slow. And if I was to combine two of the insights from those books, you're in a chimp. I refer to mine as Chimpy. I actually have a name for it.
Oh, cool.
And Daniel Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow, talked about two different brain systems, fast and slow. And the fast brain is that it's fast, automatic, instinctive, reactive, very much driven by our fight or flight response. And Peters talks about, your chimp brain rather than your human brain. And I think what we have to appreciate is we have our chimpy, our chimp, that's part of who we are. And we also have that fast brain that is instinctive and reacts. And so when you have a situation where you didn't get that piece of work, Tim or Paul, they went for another speaker, not for you. Fast brain, chimpy, straight away ignites. It's like fired up.
Bloody
it's like,
Dermot O'Leary.
That's unfair. Why did that happen? Why did this happen? Da 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 da. And I sometimes talk about, I actually have a question someone says, besides God, if you believe in God, who's the most important person you're ever going to talk to? And I go, it's yourself. Yeah. And what I've realised is we all have our chimp brain. We all have that fast part of our brain that reacts. And it's just kind of going, all right, chimpy, you feel it's unfair. It's okay. It's okay. Just take a seat. Heard what you had to say. And it's almost allowing that slower part of your brain, the rational part of your brain, to acknowledge you felt upset and you reacted. But, poor me, pass me the victim T-shirt. But, so it's understanding how our brain works. And don't beat yourself up when you sometimes feel that way. But it's like, what are you doing? Are you going window shopping for victim T-shirts? Are you just trying it on and then decided not to buy it? Or have you got a flipping wardrobe full of them? And I think, with Peter's book about the chimp brain, we can allow that chimp to run our lives. And it wants to be, centre of attention and why I'm not getting my needs met. And it's just understanding that, having that self-awareness and self-understanding. We need to kind of engage a little bit more and think about, okay, let's be a little bit rational about this. Let's understand our emotional response, but let's not necessarily automatically run with that emotional response. Let's bring in the more rational, reflective part of our brain as well, which is hard to do because the fast brain, the fight or flight, that whole part of that, it's the dominant part of our brain. And for some people, the culture conditions us to think life should be fair and you should get what you want because you're entitled to it, and therefore wear the T-shirt when you're not getting it.
It's an interesting lots of cultures, lots of things are being built on being victims at the moment. I think let's not get too much into that because you're right, there are genuine victims, but
absolutely
there's a lot of that going on. The other thing that I find really hard at the moment is and it's interesting because there's a bit about it in your book really, is I can't stand listening to radio phone-in shows anymore. I find them just so pointless because the person who phones up has got their view. You're never changing it. Exactly the same as Twitter when any celebrity or anybody else has a view. Let's just take Brexit, for instance. Oh, what is the point? everyone's made their mind up already. You know, you're not going to. Everyone goes, but if I change one person's point of view, you're not going to change it. And there's a good bit in your book where you talk about the tattoo that your daughter got. I think I've written down the actual saying rather than what she got tattooed on her. You can tell me the tattoo. The saying is, "We do not see things as they are. We see things as we are."
Yeah.
Was that what she got tattooed, or she got tattooed your?
So that is a quote. What you've just read out is a quote from the French novelist Anais Nin. And I misquoted it and went, we don't see the world as it is, but as we are. And my daughter Ruth went, I love that. And she had it tattooed on her torso. And I think you're right. You know, I talk about your brain helps you find what you're looking for. And when you kind of like, you criticize and condemn people and call them thick and stupid, you know, or a bunch of tossers. I can't believe that. I mean, think about it from a political point of view. When Hillary Clinton described Donald Trump supporters as they're just a basket case of deplorables, Donald Trump supporters didn't go, do you know, I have never thought about that. Maybe I am. Hillary, what was I thinking? You are so right. They took it as a badge of honour.
Yeah.
And I think we are now not trying to engage. We're not trying to listen to understand. We listen to defend. You know, that's where we're at in many respects. Right? And I'll tell you something else. And it's a quote from the new book. It's by an American historian called Daniel Borstein. And he says, and I found this fascinating. He said, the biggest barrier to learning is not ignorance. It's the illusion of knowledge. The biggest barrier to ignorance is not ignorance. It's the illusion of knowledge. Yeah. So when you bring on a guest, you know, particularly if it's a medical guest, and you have a lot on medics and health, I'm not knowledgeable in that area. I am ignorant. But actually, because I'm ignorant and unaware, I am totally receptive to what those doctors have to say. So my ignorance isn't a barrier to my learning. But when I think I know something, when I have the illusion of knowledge, when I think I know about religion, or I know about Brexit, or I know about what the far right and the far left think, that illusion of knowledge becomes a big barrier to me learning, because I'm not open to explore, I'm not curious, because I think I know it already.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that perhaps I've noticed you do in your podcasts in a very positive way is you are curious. You ask questions and you go, look, I know this sounds a bit thick, but help me understand. And I think the problem with a lot of people is they don't want to appear thick. They want to feel that they know it all, that they have an opinion. And you're right, it's like, you know, football phone-ins or Brexit or whatever. No, I'm sorry. But actually, your biggest barrier to learning and to moving on in life is your illusion of knowledge. Let's have a little bit more humility, open-mindedness, and a sense of curiosity. And rather than straight away rush in with, you're wrong, you know, or Theresa May's not got a clue what she's doing. Well, maybe she has, maybe she hasn't. But help me understand where you're coming from. Yeah. Why do you see the world that way? What is it in your story, in your experience of life, that, for instance, in the US, made you vote for Donald Trump? You know, and yet when we slag people off and demonize them, it doesn't help with any sense of engagement, and people don't change their mind.
Yeah, you've got to walk in that man's shoes or woman's shoes before you can understand what they're thinking. I work in media, so I've tried to always, as you know, I try and always stay on the fence, because I think that's the best place for me to be. I reckon I have biases, because I think it's not human not to.
Absolutely.
However, for all the listeners of this, do yourself a favour, because it's really exciting. Don't take sides on anything for a while. If you're fully engaged in Brexit, just pull away, or Trump, Clinton type thing. Just pull away and just watch. It's really fascinating watching humans attack each other and watching it. And if you have empathy for both sides, you suddenly see a really different way the world is. And I think it's quite an interesting place to be. You get a lot of understanding of human nature. It's it's quite a joy to watch in a way. But it also realise how futile it is to argue these things on radio phone-in shows or Twitter. It's just it's madness to try and do.
We are becoming more and more polarised in our opinions, and
Yeah.
I'm a bit like you. I'm trying to kind of understand. I mean, I came across this phrase recently, so it's not mine. It's not in any of my books. But in order to fly, we need two wings. And maybe one of them is your left wing and one of them is your right wing. And maybe in terms of politics, maybe some of the messages the left talk about, some real truths in those. And maybe there's some things that the more considered more right wing people might talk about. Oh, there's some truths in that. In order to fly, we need both wings. I'm still weighing up that phrase, but just because someone who politically is in a different place to me doesn't mean that everything they say and think and believe is completely wrong. Maybe there are things I can sometimes learn from them.
Exactly right. Okay, I'm conscious of time, but I want to get through a couple of big subjects with you, just because I think you could have a nice take on them. Maybe one of the big ones is old age. I've noticed recently, because I'm going through it, I discussed it with John Lloyd, which was fascinating. If you listen to the podcast number 99, if you want to listen to that, how he actually stopped doing a job because which was why I got news for you, because he was starting to lose his hair. I'm clearly losing my hair. I'm getting older, wrinkly, but it happens to everybody. And you go through all your 20s feeling wonderful. You hit your 30s, you start the aging process starts kicking in. We're all scared of it and we're all nervous of it. So I wondered if you had any pearls of wisdom on it, because there's a lot of money being spent on people trying to stay young. Maybe that's not the best approach.
One of the things I talk about in the book is make peace with paradox. And the paradox of life is when we're young, we want to look older. And when we're older, we want to look young. And it's not my phrase, but I came across it some time ago and I looked to see if I could find out who'd originally said it. But, old age is the price we pay for not dying young.
Oh, good.
And I think about, one of the...
Could be the prize you pay for not dying young
exactly.
as well. Yeah.
It could be the prize you pay or the price you pay. So, when my mum, who's 77, is struggling with her knees, and has to use a walking stick, but it's the price you pay for getting to 77.
I don't want to get too deep on you here, but I went for that hair transplant. I've talked about it a lot. Mark was with me and we were podcasting at the time. And one of the big factors was my brother died of cancer when he was 37. And I was sitting there thinking, what am I doing? He didn't even get a lot. That literally was one of the things that went through my life. I always think about that.
Yeah.
When I've had really heavy nights drinking, binge drinking, I always wake up the next day thinking, why did I do that? And that's the big thing. My brother didn't get the chance to do it. Why am I going to put all that stress on my internal organs?
Yes.
It's a strange thought process I go through, but I suppose that's all part of life's rich tapestry, watching things play out like that.
Yeah. And so rather, for me, do I want to, there are clearly things that we do in our lives that might age us, and that's not subjective. It's just objective facts. So spending too much time out in the sun without any sun protection, it will age the skin. So you will probably start to look older. That's a fact. If you want to do that, your call, your choice. Smoking can age you, whether you die young or old from it. At the end of the day, it can impact your skin. So there's certain things. Endurance
sport, actually.
Indeed.
John Lloyd was 98, wasn't it? Dr. Tamsin Lewis was 99. She said endurance training.
And she was, biologically 15 years older than she actually was or something. So that's why I've quit doing marathons. And the trek across the North Pole. Hey, guys, I want to look what I am, 54. I want to take some pride in my appearance. Vanity drives my behaviour at times. I'm aware of that. I'm going to admit it. I say I want to talk about sumo. I don't want to look like one. And I'm stood on a stage, and of course everybody's looking at me, and I'm kind of like thinking about motivation and mindset, and I'm thinking, take a bit of responsibility because I'm 54. Yeah. I don't know how long I've got. But what I would say this is some of the choices I make when I'm 54, some of my lifestyle decisions. If I get to 74, you know, it's not quite, we got to 74, but how am I health-wise at 74?
Yeah.
How physically able am I if I've got grandkids to engage with them? So I think the choices we make now can impact the rest of our journey. You know, if you remember the days of the week,
Yeah, I love
what
that
I'm
one.
doing on the
Yeah.
Saturday of my life can influence the quality of my Sunday and hopefully my bank holiday Monday and Tuesday. So
You better just explain that quickly for anyone who's not listened to the first podcast.
so if you imagine each day of the week represents a decade of your life.
Yeah.
So Monday is 1 to 10, Tuesday is 11 to 20, Wednesday is 21 to 30, Thursday 31 to 40, Friday 41 to 50. Saturday, which is what I'm on, 51 to 60.
Yeah, I'm just on Saturday.
And carry on going on. So no, you're at 50. You're late Friday night.
Okay, I'm late Friday night.
You're
and
late
someone,
Friday night, that's why you're partying.
This is genuinely how you've improved, or I said life-changing, or you ruined my life, is someone phoned me up and went, Tim, I want you to do this new football show that I've got lined up and stuff. You know, I think it'd be good. And I went, no, I don't want to do it. And they were like, why? And I said, I'm on Friday of my life. I've got to, that sounds like it's going to be really hard work inventing a new football show. I don't want to do it. I'm on Friday. It's Friday. Or I think she thought I might have been Saturday. I was like, no, it's the weekend. I'm not doing it. I'm not working. It's the weekend.
Yeah.
And I did talk to them about it, but it was seriously fundamental in my decision process. Hold on, 'cause to set those shows up, you're talking 7 days a week working. And I was like, no, I want to work, but I don't want to set up something. And then I realized that I would have to compete against Soccer AM, like that sort of, it's got to be that good because I did that one. And I was just like, no way, I love doing my podcast. I love doing Sunday Brunch. I've got all these projects on, you know, I don't want to add that into it.
And I think we can, you know, it can appeal to our ego to feel important,
Yeah.
but then in the end you end up burning yourself out. So in terms of age...
I sound arrogant there, by the way, turning down work, but it was a serious decision. But that was one of the...
And it's great that people can sometimes, but you're in a position maybe that you could do that.
Yeah.
But you've also... You know, you are 50 years old, and I think when you're in your early 20s, you're going to say yes to a few more things. Perhaps when we get a bit older, we become a bit choosier about stuff.
So when you look in the mirror, come on, we all do this. We look in the mirror and go, oh, Christ, look how old I'm looking. What do you have to do? What do you have to...
Well, when I look in the mirror, I'm more concerned about my stomach and my man boobs than anything else.
Yeah, but you're
a
a good-looking guy, but you're getting wrinkles now.
Thanks for the feedback. Thanks. It's actually this lighting. I'm actually fine. I'm fine.
But it's true. You're like, you got a full head of hair. You're good-looking, but we're starting to get wrinkles. Come on, you look in the mirror. What happens?
Seriously, I do not look primarily at my face.
Yeah, but what the rest of us do.
Okay,
so what we doing?
My brain takes me to the bits of my body that I don't like,
Right.
and that would be my chest area, and it would be my stomach at times. And people will go, "Oh, you don't look too fat to me," but sometimes it's all, you know,
Right,
self-perception, what you think.
Yeah.
So for me, very often I'm like, my focus is, can I get into 32 size waist trousers? That becomes important for me. And really also now, and it is a thing that I now do. So I go, you know, this is a body, not that's because of hours and hours spent at the gym, but because of minutes and minutes spent at the gym. That's it. But I will walk, I will take exercise, and I think as I get older, I'm not looking in the mirror going, I'm looking old. I mean, I'm wearing a lot grayer, and I, you know, was attempted to dye my hair at one stage. I wrestled with it and thought, no, just don't do that. But again, other people want to, their call. I do a lot more exercises now to do with flexibility, and stretching.
But is it cool to dye your hair? Like, if you're a man, is it cool to dye your hair, not just accept who you are?
Well, no, that's what I said. Look, it's cool for some people if they want to do it.
Why?
I chose not to.
Yeah, but why do you think that's cool? Is it not better to accept
Because I don't
you?
want to be judging people for making that decision.
That's your job.
That's their decision. And what? My job is to judge. My job is to share some ideas which you are perfectly free to accept or reject. So for me, I made a choice. I'm not going to dye my hair. I also made a choice, put it bluntly, and it sounds maybe, I want to take care of how I look. So I moisturize. You know, how good that is, I don't know. When I'm now sunbathing, I didn't used to do it. I'm putting sun cream on because I'm thinking, you know, skin cancer is one thing, but also just you age more.
Yeah.
So I'm taking responsibility for how I look because, as I said before, and I don't think I'm an exception here, I'm driven to a degree by vanity. But I'm kind of also like thinking not just about looking old. I'm thinking, okay, so today is Thursday, October the 25th. We'll never get this day back. let's just enjoy part of today. Let's savor when I'm eating my food.
Yeah.
Let's spot that flower. Let's smell that coffee. Let's, enjoy relationships, banter, discussion, laughter. And I suppose in my mind, that's become what is important in life rather than I've got some more wrinkles. Flipping heck, I know I have. I've struggled with my self-image and how I look physically since I was probably 9 or 10 years old. For some people, then you start looking at themselves in the mirror in their 40s and go, I'm flipping looking old. I have looked in a mirror for the last 44 years of my 54 years and thought, you're fat.
Wow.
So that's been the issue for me, not that I've got some wrinkles or I've still got my hair or not got my hair. It's been more of a weight issue than a wrinkle issue.
It's funny when you work on TV because people are very critical of the way you look all the time. And Mark's discussed this with me on the podcast before, that people always go, guy, isn't he looking older than when he did Soccer M? Yes, I am. I'm 10 years older than when I did Soccer M.
My mum said about some guy I'd not seen for a few years. She said, he's looking very old. I said, how old is he? She said, he's 82. I said, do you know what, Mum? In my experience, when you get to 82, there's a good chance you will look a bit older than when you saw them 30 years ago. What's that one about?
By the way, I've got some great advice for you if you are trying to stay younger and moisturize. Always moisturize from within. Make sure it's what you put inside yourself. That's the way to moisturize yourself. And eat your water. I've said this. Mark's laughed at me.
Eat your water.
Yeah, Mark's laughed at me this before. What that means is eat water-enriched foods. So fruit and vegetables. That's where you get a lot of your water.
So we're all off out after this podcast for a cucumber. Can't wait.
Also, another good tip for you. If you're going to sunscreen yourself, make sure you sunscreen your hands as well because they're a giveaway. Make sure you don't have old hands and a young face.
Good point.
All right, another couple of things we'll quickly do because I think they're important. The next one, because these are the sort of stuff people write to me about all the time, so I quite like it. Rejection, tough thing to deal with, rejection.
Yeah.
But it always happens. Everyone faces rejection, whether it comes from work or relationships or sporting teams or anything like that. What's the best way to deal with rejection?
First of all, it's to ignore the advice that says, don't take it personally. Because, of course, you're going to take it personally. You know, when Sumo was rejected by 13 publishers, it was my book, it was my idea, I'm going to take it personally. You know, when a girl split up with me when I was, 14 or 15 years old, I've been going out for 2 weeks and she was the love of my life. I took it personally. When another girlfriend two-timed me, I took it personally. So on one level, let's just get over that crap advice that goes, well, don't take it personally. You know, it's okay to not always feel okay. So maybe to feel upset about some stuff. And going back to your acronym of ARM, so accept this has happened and accept how I'm feeling. Let's take some responsibility for how I'm going to deal with it and then maybe move on. You should market that one, mate.
My arm,
your
yeah,
arm. Kiss the arm, kiss the arm. Sumo and arm,
kiss those
together.
Guns, yeah. Arm, by the way, is accept, take responsibility, and move on. It's my acronym.
But accept that actually, in our evolutionary history, 150,000 years ago, whatever. If you're part of a tribe, and for whatever reason you are pushed out of that tribe, you are rejected, that will lead to certain death. So there is something within our genetic makeup, our brain, for our survival instinct that kind of wants to be accepted. We want to be valued, we want to be accepted. And also a big fundamental issue within human behaviour that is necessary, and you think about it with children, is we want to feel secure. So you've got all that going on as part of your evolutionary history, part of maybe your chimp brain or your fast brain. And then in life, you get rejected. Now, I was chatting to my daughter about this, and she said the first rejection is often the hardest. Mm-hmm. And then once that's happened, maybe it can sometimes become a bit easier. I think that's interesting to think about that. Also, sometimes, in my experience, rejection isn't the end of the story. In some experiences, obviously I had the sumo thing where I got lots of rejections. Yeah. But I had, before sumo, I was, an unknown trainer who ran workshops for, say, 12 to 16 people. I'd done a book called 59 Minutes to a Calmer Life. And someone at Manchester United not in the coaching, but in the HR department, had read it and really enjoyed it. He contacts me and says, we're really interested in using you to do some stuff with the staff. Now, at that time, we're talking about, say, 2002. I'm like thinking, can you imagine having the name Manchester United on the website as someone you've worked with? So I call him. He's asked me to call him. We agree the date of the session, the content, and the fee. He said, I've just got to dot a couple of I's, cross a couple of T's, but you're in. I'm doing a little lap of honour of my little office. I'm absolutely thrilled. I can't believe this. He's going to confirm everything within 24 hours. A week later, I've heard nothing. Finally, I drop him a quick email going, look, I'm really looking forward to working with you. I just do need the official email just to confirm everything's going ahead. He writes back almost like a kind of Dear John kind of letter or email. Due to circumstances, we're no longer able to proceed. Mm-hmm. But can I thank you for your interest in working with us as an organisation? That was my rejection. Well, my chimp brain, chimpy, is fired up straight away. The fast part of my brain is talking about the injustice. I want to react straight away and reply with, thank you for your interest in working with us as an organisation. Who contacted who first? Yeah. Right? And also, I'd heard a week of silence, and you finally only told me when I emailed you. Couldn't you have had the courtesy to have let me know? So I've got all that going on. I've had that rejection. I'm feeling very, very emotional. However, E plus R equals out. It's the event plus how you respond that influences the outcome. And I'm so wanting to send that email. And I know I will feel good. And everyone needs to understand how they will feel good in the short term. And I'll often say, you know, when you strike whilst the iron's hot, sometimes people get burnt. I so wanted to do that email. I didn't. I waited 24 hours. I'd had a rejection. And I just emailed him back. When I was feeling a bit calmer, still a bit upset, but chimpy had been kind of like quietened a bit, and the slow part of my brain, the reflective, think a bit more long-term than short-term, had been engaged. And I just sent an email that went, you know what, I appreciate circumstances change. Just to let you know, as I'm geographically pretty close to you, I'd be prepared to come in and maybe just do a taster session for you rather than a one-day event. Maybe we could do something over at lunchtime, and obviously based on that, it would be at a much reduced rate. And I don't just do stuff on stuff, but leadership and dealing with change, customer service. And half an hour later, Manchester United booked me.
Yes.
So, and as a result of that, and I hardly did any other work with them, but later on when City were looking at some of the work I was doing in Manchester City, I think I'd established some credibility. So, a few things to think about, to recap. When people say don't take it personally, accept that actually probably you will, that's part of our evolutionary makeup, that rejection can be a challenging thing. Secondly, understand maybe the first rejection can be the hardest, because then you become more resilient and conditioned to accept that's part of life. And thirdly, sometimes recognise that even though you don't want to be, sometimes be gracious in your response. So it might well be, you know, I didn't get that job, but just wanted to say, thanks for the opportunity, or can you give me maybe some feedback on the interview and how I could do it better next time? And of course, sometimes a gracious response could open a door in the future. When that comes to relationships, you know, of course you want to put it all on social media, what a bastard he was, what a bitch she was, or whatever. But again, maybe, you know, was it Michelle Obama said, you know, when they go low, we go high. So acknowledge you feel hurt, acknowledge you possibly hate that person in the short term. But again, it's not the event, it's not just the rejection, it's how you respond that's going to ultimately influence your outcome.
Yeah. I also think don't be scared to get rejected, because life can get really dull if you don't get it. In relationships, work and everything, just go for it.
I've
go
got
for rejection.
A friend of mine, John, probably said to me about 20 years ago, I'm going to write a book one day, you know. I am going to definitely write a book. And if I talk to John now, he has never been rejected by a publisher. And there's a very simple reason why he's never been rejected, because he's never actually sent a flipping proposal.
Yeah, it's like me. I'm unbeaten in the ring still in boxing.
And me too. Me too.
Hey, we have that in common.
Undefeated.
Yes,
undefeated. With your arm and my sumo.
Face rejection and then laugh about it. That's it. Go for rejection.
Well,
and
maybe
laugh
you
about
will
it.
laugh eventually,
You will laugh
but
eventually,
just again, recognise it's reality.
Yeah. exactly right. It is reality. The final big subject I want to just get into, but is work relations. This is something people talk about often because you end up in a job, you like your job or you don't like your job, but let's pretend you like your job for this purpose. But you have to work with people. Life is not, work is not life. It's a game. That's what I perceive it as. Don't know if you agree with me.
I do.
Because it doesn't have the same rules as there's someone you hate. In real life, you walk away from them or leave them. You have to go and spend every day with these people. How would you go about dealing with bad work relations?
Bad work relations. Well, again, it's to harp on about E plus R equals O, but think about maybe the E rather than event represents behaviour, the other person.
Yeah.
So perhaps understand, there's something maybe about this person I don't like. Maybe it's about their behaviour. But again, going back to one of our other points, am I getting so wound up about the speck in their eye that I'm missing out the plank in mine? So am I contributing to the problem? Is it about my attitude? Is it about my behaviour? Have I taken an instant dislike to them? You know, your brain helps you find what you're looking for. So every time they say this or do that, do I home in on it and ignore all the things that maybe are okay about them? So that could be one way of dealing with things. But there's also a point where, you know, in one of my books I talk about, you know, you get what you tolerate. And if you keep tolerating someone's behaviour in the way they are with you, perhaps they're bullying, or another phrase I use, you know, my silence, denial, or avoidance gives approval to the situation, gives approval to the behaviour. So what you've got to accept is sometimes don't just sort of automatically look at them and they're the bad ones and I'm the good guy. It takes two to tango. So how am I contributing? But then sometimes you think, I've had that honest reflection, Paul. And the fact is, they're saying this, they're doing that, they're being inappropriate, or they're not doing something. And you've got to make a decision. Okay, do I let sleeping dogs lie and decide it's a battle I don't want to fight because I'm more bothered about winning the war? So I'll be nice to them because, you know, it could ultimately, you know, that I'll be transferred or moved to another department anyway. Or is it, no. I need to say or do something here because my silence, denial, or avoidance has given approval.
Yeah.
And perhaps from that point of view, you then sometimes do have to sort of like, you know, grasp the nettle. I mean, I had a situation recently and it was unintentional, but there was someone else in my sphere of speaking and education and training who was using some of my material.
Oh.
And lots of people can kind of use my material and they get the book, and I'm kind of cool on that. But this person who I like and I get on with, and he's a cracking bloke, but there was a key part of my material. It wasn't just like a catchphrase or one brief insight. It was like a core part of my material. And him and his team were using some of those ideas now, and we'd not talked about it. Now, I know the guy, and he was not going out of his way to screw me or rip me off at all. But you get what you tolerate. And if I was prepared to tolerate that behaviour, I think I would have got more angry and resentful. And in the end, I just rang him up. We chatted about a couple of other things, and I went, oh, by the way, I need just to talk to you about so-and-so. And he went, fair enough. Didn't realise just how big a core part of your material it was. I'll tell all my associates to stop using the material. If I'd have not said anything, silence, denial, or avoidance, it would have given approval to that behaviour carrying on. So, I mean, that's one bit about work relationships.
I nick a lot of your stuff. I always credit you with it, though. I always say, Paul McGee.
Yeah, you might credit it. And also, you're not necessarily speaking to corporations, going to schools and work with the NHS.
I'm not. The other thing, though, is I suppose, is that a lot of your stuff is being said, but in different ways, isn't it? So it's hard to copyright it in a way.
I think you're absolutely right. You know, so I use this metaphor about when you're on a plane in the safety announcements, if there's a drop in cabin pressure, the oxygen mask will come down. Put your own on first before helping others.
Yeah.
I use that, and I talk about the word inspire can mean to breathe life into, but sometimes people, politics, change, uncertainty, Brexit can suck the life out of you. So, but let's be honest, other people could have come up with that metaphor before me.
Were you the first person to use that?
Oh, I would.
Hasn't Jordan Peterson been using that?
Yeah, but it's a common insight, isn't it?
Right.
So he'll never have heard me, and And
You
I
don't
didn't
know
get
that.
it from him.
All right.
It's highly unlikely, and I'm not going to be arrogant enough to sit here and go, I'm the only person who's ever come up with that insight. And also, do you know what I find interesting? Is so one of the chapters, Make Peace with Paradox.
I'm gonna go nuts when people start using arm.
Well, that definitely is yours.
Kiss the
But
guns.
So I thought, what a great phrase, make peace with paradox. How good's that?
Yeah.
I was re-listening to an old podcast from a couple of years ago, and that phrase is actually used in the podcast by someone, only briefly. So I think sometimes some of the ideas I talk about, I'm not going to say I just came up with them out of the blue. They were inspired by other conversations, by other thoughts, by my reading what other people said, what I heard people say, and maybe some things got into my subconscious without me even being aware of it.
I was having a problem at work once, and my mate Pete said, "Look, I've got a book for you. It's about it's how to, I can't remember what it's called now, how to talk to work colleagues or something like how to negotiate." Anyway, so I read this book, and then we met for coffee, and he said, "What do you think?" And I went, "Really, Pete? You wanted me to read that book?" He goes, "Yeah, what does it say?" It basically says, "Don't be a dick," doesn't it? I went, "Yeah, that's basically what it says." There's always room for negotiation with everything. There's always ways. It basically said, don't be a dick. Just try and be nice, and then try and find what other people want, and then try and negotiate your way around it.
And if you remember from what I said last time, beach ball,
Yes.
six coloured beach ball. I'm seeing blue, white and green.
Yes.
You're seeing red, yellow and orange. Let's just understand that if I'm going to build a better relationship with you, let me try and at least understand your side of the beach ball and communicate mine. But also, there are dickheads. And sometimes they're not bothered about your side of the beach ball, only theirs. And there are no magic wands in how you deal with them.
Exactly. It's a huge beach ball, by the way. It's in a room. It's an absolutely huge beach ball, and you can only see one side of it, and the other person can only see the other side of it. That's it. All right, I think we've come. I just want very, very quickly, because I know we're running out of time, but the 7 C's, I think, is a brilliant one, brilliant analogy. That's about workplace, isn't it?
Yes.
It's the you've come up with this sort of nice analogy, seven words beginning with C that you need to be happy at work.
Yeah, so for me, it's like I occasionally, maybe it's a middle-aged thing, but I enjoy going to my garden centres occasionally, Some people go to nightclubs, I go to garden centres with my wife. And when you buy a bush or a plant or whatever, it comes with a little card. And on that card, it's basically saying, if you want me to thrive and flourish, this is how you deal with me. And I either need a lot of sun, not too much sun, water me regularly, minimally, whatever.
Yeah.
And yet, wouldn't it be great if when you met someone, you meet Mark, you meet yourself, I meet you, and when you opened the door, and you went, "Hi, Paul, I'm Tim. Here's a card. Here's how to get the best out of me." It's like, but life's not like that, is it? Mark's thinking that would be would be a great idea.
Marcus will have feed me beer.
Yeah.
Look at you giving me dirty looks. But
the reality is, sometimes, you do think actually how to operate machinery, how to grow plants, there are a set of instructions. But with people, there aren't. So you make some guesses. And in terms of the context of work, I was thinking, okay, how can you get the best out of people? What causes people to thrive and flourish? So the 7 C's briefly. Clarity. I think some people don't perform well at work because they're not actually totally clear on what success looks like. And when you hear your boss say, "Come on, put the customer at the heart of all we do," what does that actually mean?
Yeah.
So sometimes there's a lack of clarity, sense of direction or purpose. Another one is, am I really competent? When I joined the bank, Jackie, who was my kind of buddy, my mentor, said, this job's dead easy. A monkey blindfolded could do it. I did not feel comfortable saying, "Jackie, I'm dumber than a blind monkey. Could you go through that one again?" I wasn't competent. I wasn't maybe cut out to do the job. So have I got the skills, the knowledge, the training to do a good job? So you've got clarity, you've got competence. Am I confident? And maybe that confidence is sometimes hindered because I don't ever get feedback that I'm doing a good job. Am I comfortable? Am I comfortable with the people I'm around? Hopefully you get good podcasts with your guests and you get good, on Sunday brunch, because people feel comfortable in your presence. They're not going to thrive and flourish if they feel uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. Another C is, do I feel challenged in what I'm doing? Am I over-challenged or am I under-challenged? We need that sense of challenge. And the final 2, do I feel cared for? Do I feel that my company isn't just, I'm a number, but if I've got an issue, if I'm going through some difficult times, there's at least someone at work who has my well-being at heart. And the final one, the final C is sense of control. You know, I understand after the start of the race, the most stressful part of a race for a Formula One motor racing driver is the pit stop, because they're out of control. When I'm being micromanaged, when I've got no freedom or flexibility, I don't have any sense of control. So it's in the book, because I've obviously rushed through those, but if you have those 7 C's and you rate yourself, if you can score highly in all 7, you will thrive and flourish in the workplace.
It's a great advice for bosses as well.
Oh, well, it's what I say to bosses is actually, look, these 7 C's are for you, but they're also for your team.
Yeah.
And have conversations with your team, because if they're going, well, actually, boss, the reason why I'm not performing so well is because I'm not 100% clear on what's expected of me, or I've got all these competing demands on me. Or, boss, I don't feel I may be doing great at presentations, and I try and avoid them because I don't feel, we might use the word competent, but I don't feel I've had the training on how to present well. And they'll go on Paul McGee's sumo presentation masterclass and you'll be fine.
Of course. Okay, thanks, Paul, for doing this again. I asked you the questions last time, didn't I?
You did.
Invaluable advice stuff. Did I ask you the meaning of life last time? What is the meaning of life?
No, you didn't.
Oh, what is the meaning of life?
No, sorry. Oh, no, you did, but I'm happy to revisit it. I think I said to you last time, the meaning of life is to find meaning in life.
Yeah.
And there's no doubt about it. Again, going back to how can we thrive and flourish? We need purpose and we need meaning. And I think the big challenge for people, perhaps ultimately, is, you know, in this vast, vast universe of which we are just a speck of dust in comparison with the whole great vastness, it's a miracle that we're here, but then once it's ended, that's it, and ultimately there was no real meaning other than what we gave as meaning to life. That isn't an issue for some people. So what I would just say is perhaps in order to discover real meaning in life, remain open-minded.
Yes.
And remain curious.
Which is a fundamental problem with a lot of, oh God, do I want to say this? No. Let's leave it there. But if you end up having too many rules and laws in your life, then people are making decisions for you. You've got to make your own decisions, I think. Is there an afterlife?
Remain open-minded and remain curious. And perhaps this sense of certainty, either yes or no, is not great when you think it's a flipping vast, vast universe and we're a flipping speck of dust.
Paul, I always enjoy your company. Thank you so much for coming on again. Your book, How to Have a Great Life, 35 Surprisingly Simple Ways to Success, Fulfillment and Happiness, is out now. It's endorsed by TV presenter and broadcaster Tim Lovejoy, so it's got to be good.
That explains advice. The slow sales.
Oh, no, it's a really good book. I recommend anyone read this because it's just got so many different bits in it. And anyone who's listening to this, please, when you're eating your dinner or your lunch or wherever you're reading this, or listening to this afterwards, the next meal, just take some time to savor it. Honestly, slightly weird because you start going, oh, these flavors. Sounds mental, but you probably don't ever taste your food anymore. You just eat it on autopilot. And
can I also just say, people want to connect?
Yes, please do.
At thesumoguy.com. Or just find out more about the stuff that we're doing, both in the world of work and also for children. If you go to thesumoguy.com, and you can find out further things from there. And it's been brilliant to be with you again. Really, and you're on Twitter at the Sumo Guy. The Sumo Guy. Yeah. Well, I hope you enjoy your beer. And I'm going to absolutely love it. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Come back next year. Be delighted to. Cheers, Paul. Thank you.